Hello, hello. Michelle here with My Designs in the Chaos, where it's my goal to develop, encourage, and grow your crafting talent and confidence. And we are on episode number 29 of our daily dose of design, where every single day I have been going live sharing tips, tricks, strategies, techniques, all kinds of different things with you, all about designing your own SVG files. We've talked about everything from what software you should be using, what are the different types of files for. I've given you some examples of how to utilize some of the tools inside of your software. We've talked about ways to get ideas, tons and tons of information for the past 29 days. We've got today and tomorrow left in our 30-day series, and I'm really excited today to be able to answer a very common question that gets asked whenever, not only when you're designing SVG files, but also when you're trying to decide, maybe you are ready for a computer upgrade and you're not sure what is the right direction to go. Hello, hello. If you're joining in, please let me know that you're tuning in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, let me know replay in the comments. And if you have a question that you would like to have featured in this series, make sure to send it over info@mydesignsinthechaos.com. If you'd like to get each of these videos in your inbox every day, make sure to sign up in the link that's in the description. And let's go ahead and dive in. So today's question is, what is the difference when you are designing on a Mac computer versus when you are designing on a Windows computer? And so this is a question that I get pretty frequently because people always want to know the right answer. Has anybody ever been stuck with that and said, like, oh my gosh, okay, that's great, there's all these options, but what's the right one? Well, sometimes there isn't necessarily a right option that's across the board. You have to determine what's the right option for you. And so hopefully throughout these past 30 days, I've been able to enlighten you a little bit on a whole bunch of different features and things that are inside of these software so that you can make a better right decision for yourself. And so today, that's what I want to talk about. What is the difference between designing on a Windows versus a Mac? Let me know, like a PC or a Mac. Let me know in the comments if you have a preference to which computer type you use. Typically, people are pretty set in which style they love. They're either diehard Macs, like they love their Mac to pieces, they don't ever want to have a PC, or they are PC gals and they love them and they don't ever want to have to go to a Mac, because they are totally different, right? Like both of these operating systems, the computers, the usage, totally different, but at the same time, they're not that different, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share some of these differences once you actually get into your software. Because as you guys know, I teach a course 123 SVG. So I actually have a Mac and a PC so that I am able to help my students on both programs or both computer versions, because some of the buttons and things are a little bit different. And so I like to be able to showcase both of those. And so even though the majority of the recordings happen on my PC, I have the Mac that I'll do in some of the live sessions, as well as when I'm voicing what it is I'm doing, I'm saying what to do on the Mac as well, if that makes sense. So today I want to talk about three differences between the two whenever you are inside of your software. And Trish says that 123 SVG rocks. Yay! If you've taken our class or if you are going to be in the live experience that will be starting soon, let me know in the comments. I'm really, really excited about this round of the class. The doors will be opening for that April 25th. So stay tuned. So if you've loved this series, you will love that course where we go a whole lot deeper, I should say, in the technical how-to part of the software. But let me get back to our question for the day, is difference between designing in a Mac versus Windows. Now, when I'm talking about designing, I'm talking about using the programs Inkscape and Adobe Illustrator to actually create your own SVG files. And there's three big differences that I want to talk about today. So number one is the toolbar across the top. So across the top of your screen, when you open up your menu, the toolbar on a Mac does look a a little bit different inside of Adobe Illustrator. And I think that that has to do with the size of your screen. That's going to impact it on a PC as well. So if you have a smaller screen, if you're on a laptop or a MacBook Pro, your screen is probably a little bit smaller. That impacts what that top toolbar looks like. And so you might see in a video tutorial that this person has this toolbar across the top, and it's like, why isn't mine there? It could be because Mac versus PC, or it could also be screen size. And so Leslie says all of these daily doses, she goes into so much deeper inside of the 123 SVG course content. So, and Robin says that she's taking the class again to get more details. Yay, I'm so excited. That's big difference. Number one is a toolbar across the top inside of Adobe Illustrator and Inkscape. Now, inside of those softwares, almost everything is personalizable, meaning you can move things around. You can shift where things are located. You can make it look the way you want. But if you've ever been watching a tutorial and you're like, why does my toolbar not look like that toolbar? It could be the Mac versus PC issue. So that's number one. And then also keep in mind your screen size. That's going to change what that looks like. Okay, number two, and in my opinion, this is the biggest difference when you're learning to design on a PC versus when you're learning to design on a Mac. And these are the buttons that are actually on your keyboard. So if you are on a PC, and you hear somebody or you see somebody or you need to be using the control button on your keyboard. This happens when you start becoming comfortable with some of the keyboard shortcuts. As you design more and more, there's certain shortcuts that you'll want to use on your keyboard rather than having to click open the menu every single time. And so with keyboard shortcuts, you'll see that there's a control button on your PC. Well, on a Mac, you have a control button, but it doesn't do the same thing. So when somebody's saying use the control button and they're on a PC, on a Mac, you'll have to be using the command button. So command equals control on a PC, which is kind of confusing a little bit. So control on a PC is the compound, or the command, sorry, not compound, is the command button on a Mac. So control on a PC equals the command button on a Mac. So that's a huge difference there. And then the second big difference on the buttons is Alt. On a PC keyboard, you'll see the button Alt. When you are on a Mac, you actually don't have that Alt button at all. And so you're using the Option key. And so those two, I think, are probably the biggest things that trip people up when they're trying to go between the two. And so control on a PC equals command on a Mac. Alt on a PC equals Option key on a Mac. And that's a huge, huge difference. So if you're ever listening to a tutorial and you hear that or you get hung up with that, keep those things in mind. Control on a PC is command on a Mac. Alt on a PC is Option on a Mac. So good little piece of advice there. And so that is number two big difference. And Leslie says that she took the class twice, mostly just for fun, the people and new projects, but also she learned so much and she knew nothing when she started. So thank you so, so much for those kind words, Leslie. So that's number two, the biggest difference. So number one, we talked about the toolbar across the top. It could be screen size, but it could also be between Mac and a PC. Number two, we talked about the buttons on the keyboard. So control on a PC is command on a Mac. Alt on a PC is Option on a Mac. And then number three, the biggest difference I've personally found is the clicks. So on a Mac, you don't have right click, left click. Like on a mouse, you have your right click and left click buttons, unless you have a Mac where you can get an adapter to plug in USB, because on a Mac, you don't have like the USB ports. You can get an adapter to plug those in on my MacBook. Unless you have an adapter that you can plug in a little mouse like this, your keyboard, and I'll hold this up right here so you guys can see, y'all can see my adapter here. It looks like this. So when somebody's saying right click or left click, it's like, what is it? What do I click? Because there's only one big mouse pad. And so the clicks are a big difference there. And so unless I highly suggest if you're a PC person and you're transitioning to a Mac, just get a little adapter and plug in a mouse that has the right and left clicks. You'll already be comfortable with that and it makes it really easy. But if you only have that little keypad, it's a double click. And so when you have your left click, that is the one you always click, that's just the normal one click. If you're trying to do a right click, like somebody says, right click and it'll open this menu. And you're like, there's no right click, it's all one thing. Do both fingers, like click like both, and that'll be like your right click. So it's kind of like it's a little techie there, but just that's a big difference. That was one of the biggest adjustments for me, was the actual clicking situation of the mouse. So again, you have one click is just your right click. Is your normal left click that you would do. That's one click. But if you're trying to get a left click, a right click, okay, let me start over. All the right clicks, left clicks. Your normal click that you do is the left click, like the one click. You can do that on a keyboard on a Mac. If you're trying to get the right click to open up a menu inside of Adobe Illustrator or Inkscape, there's no right click option. And so you have to do a double click. You click with both fingers, and that will read the option of a right click. And so those are, in my opinion, the three biggest differences. Number one, the toolbars across the top of the programs. Number two, the buttons on your keyboard. So the control versus command, the alt versus option. And then number three, your mouse clicking situation of the one click versus two clicks, or right click versus left click. So you don't have the right click versus left click on the Mac, you have one click or a double finger click. And so that was a huge adjustment for me. So Renee says she switched to a Mac from a PC last year and she absolutely loves it. And so there's a lot of different differences, and as you dive into it a little bit deeper, you'll know. But in my opinion, having both a PC and a Mac and being proficient at both in both Inkscape and Adobe Illustrator, those are the three biggest differences that you're going to see as far as the toolbars, the buttons on the keyboard, and then the mouse clicking situation. And so hopefully that should help. Whenever you're watching various tutorials or things like that, that should enlighten what's going on with the clicking or the button situation. As long as you know if they're on a Mac or they're on a PC, this should illuminate what those differences are for you so that you know what you need to be doing. So thanks so much for tuning in for me today. Tyrone says that this was super, super helpful. She was watching a tutorial and was really confused because she didn't realize that there's a difference. And a lot of times if you've only used one, like if you've only ever used Mac or you've only ever used PC, you don't realize that everything is not the same. And so hopefully this will bridge that gap a little bit. And you guys have a wonderful day. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful to you. And then I will see you guys back live tomorrow for episode number 30 in our daily dose of design. And I have a fun little series that we're going to be doing. So it's not totally over, but tomorrow I'm going to share a cool little miniature series that we're going to do before we open up the doors for 123 SVG at the end of April. So I'll see you guys back tomorrow with episode number 30. Have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.